So this is a bit of a departure into the 17th century. We're more maritime 19th century. So interesting for us, interesting for you, hopefully. You've got a little booklet of songs. Most, but not all the songs are in the booklet, as you'll see as we go along. So David was saying this is all part of a project looking at the English Civil War and how it affected Arundel and West Sussex. So if you go along to the exhibition, you'll learn a lot more. And we've also produced a documentary video which will be available. So obviously I can't give you the whole history of the Civil War in Arundel and West Sussex this evening. So allowing the songs to speak for themselves. What I would say is that we live in quite divisive times politically now. And of course there's lots of commentary about the power of social media influencing people and fake news and so on and so forth. Back in the 17th century, during the time of the English Civil War, two ways you could influence people were by the printed word. This is the era of the small portable printing press, so people were printing out leaflets and pamphlets all over the place, some of which were reliable, some of which were bonkers, much like now, really. But another way, of course, you could influence people was by song. So obviously people didn't have radio or anything like that, so people liked to learn songs. And if you had a good tune, that's a great way of getting your message across. So the songs we're singing this evening are a mixture of some songs are royalist, some songs are parliamentarian, some songs are just trying to have fun in the midst of a civil war, which isn't an easy thing to do. So we're going to start with a song that is royalist, but a lot of these songs, they could start off as royalist or parliamentarian, but then the other side would get hold of them and do a parody version. So you're never quite sure which version you're getting. So although this one is basically a royalist song, there's little bits in it where you're thinking, oh well, they're having a bit of a go at the royalists there. So this is Fighting for Old Charlie, so if you find that in your booklets, it's got a good chorus for joining in. We might be able to tell who's parliamentarian and who's royalist in the audience by who joins in. I should say, by the way, I'm Chris, this is Steve, this is Dave, and this is Johnny. And Johnny's the man who's going to give us the right note to start, hopefully.
In 1642, I knew what I would have to do. I'd leave my home and family to join the Royalist Army. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie.
In 1643, those Roundheads, they were after me, but we were on a winning spree,
fighting for old Charlie. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie.
In 1644 we had a battle at Marston Moor. Many men died to uphold the law,
fighting for old Charlie. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie.
In 1645 our fortunes they did take a dive, but I thank God I'm still alive
and fighting for old Charlie. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie. In 1646 those Roundheads they were up to tricks. They had our army in a fix, but we'll fight on for Charlie. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie.
In 1647, most of us were up in heaven, some of us were down in Devon,
fighting for old Charlie. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie.
In 1648 Cromwell was knocking at the gate. Reserves had come, but it's too late,
but we'll fight on for Charlie. Tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie. In 1649 our story
he's come to the end of the line. The king is dead, he's lost his head, and half his royalist army, tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie, tooraloo-raloo-ralay, 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 fighting for old Charlie.
So the next song could really have been sung by either side in the Civil War. I've got a sense it's more Puritan, parliamentarian than royalist, and it's a song that is perhaps most relevant for Arundel and its history, because Arundel was attacked and counter-attacked several times during the Civil War. Nowhere else in the whole county suffered as Arundel did, and on the last occasion the castle was besieged by General Waller's parliamentary forces, and that included Waller stabling his horses here in the church and then dragging 2 small cannon up into the tower of the church and firing them directly into the castle. Not so much with the aim of demolishing the walls of the castle, but, you know, the morale wouldn't exactly be improved, would it, by this happening. And this song really is about an attack and a siege, and about how everybody was involved in trying to defend, in the song, either the castle or the town against those who are attacking it. And it's called When Cannons Are Roaring. When Cannons Are Roaring.
Hark the alarm call, war clouds are thundering, foemen in wooden bed to the town's plundering. Then will the brave and true to stand and rallying, fight for their lands and laws, rushing and sallying. When cannons are roaring and bullets are flying, he who would honour win must not fear dying. Soldiers with swords in hand to the walls coming, horsemen about the streets riding and running, sentinels on the walls on a-crying, petards against the walls, wildfire a-flying. When cannons are roaring and bullets are flying, he who would honour win must not fear dying. Trumpets on turrets high, they are a-sounding, drums beating out aloud, echoes resounding. Alarm bells in each place, they are a-ringing, women with stones in laps to the walls bringing. When cannons are roaring and bullets are flying, he who would honour win must not fear dying. Portcullis in the ports they are down-letting, burghers come flocking by to their hands setting. Ladders against the walls they are uprearing, women great timber logs to the walls bearing. When cannons are roaring and bullets are flying, he who would honour win must not fear dying. Captains in open fields on their foes rushing, gentlemen second them with their pikes pushing. Engineers in the trench, earth uprearing, gunpowder in the mines, pagans are blowing. When cannons are roaring and bullets are flying, he who would honour win must not fear dying. When cannons are roaring and bullets are flying, he who would honour win must not fear dying.
So the next song, if you want to find it in your booklet, is Hey Then Up Go We. And this is a really good example of a song that starts off as a parody and then is adopted by the people it's supposed to be parodying. So this song was originally written by royalist propagandists to make the parliamentarians, the Puritans, look in the worst possible light, to make them look like fanatical lunatics who wanted to destroy everything, the church, the state, universities, even the dignity of the clergy. I mean, for goodness sake. And so it's there to make people think, oh, these people are mad. But of course, there were certain people, particularly in the New Model Army, who'd fought all these battles against the Royalists, who actually thought, yeah, actually, we do believe that. That is what we want. So what became a parody was then taken on by some of the more radicals as their true beliefs. Not exactly a song of toleration. I think we can probably agree on that.
Know this, my brethren, heaven is clear and all the clouds are gone. The righteous man shall flourish now, good days are coming on. Then come, my brethren, and be glad and e'er rejoice with me. Lord sleeves and rochers shall go down, and hey, then up go we. Whate'er the popish hands have built, our hammers shall undo. We'll break their pipes and burn their coats and pull down churches too. We'll exercise within the groves and teach beneath a tree. We'll make a pulpit of a cask, and hey, then up go we. We'll put down universities where learning is professed, because they practice and maintain the language of the beast. We'll drive the doctors out of doors and all that learned be. We'll cry all arts and learning down, and hey, then up go we. If once the anti-Christian crew be crushed and overthrown, we'll teach the nobles how to stoop and keep the gentry down. Good manners have an ill report and turn to pride we see. We'll therefore put good manners down, and hey, then up go we. The name of Lord shall be abhorred, for every man's a brother. No reason why in church and state one man should rule another. But when the change of government shall set our fingers free, we'll make these wanton brothers stew, and hey, then up go we.
Now, all these songs can be traced back to the time of the English Civil War. There was one song that myself and Johnny found. We thought, this is brilliant, this is a perfect Puritan soldier type song, and then it turned out to be an American shaker song or something like that, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, from the 19th century. Although they probably soaked up, you know, that spirit of fervent Protestantism that came out of the English Civil War. But we didn't include it because we thought we couldn't justify it. This song, The False Knight, can't be definitely dated to the Civil War, but it has the feel of the Civil War. And it's about a child meeting this knight on the road. Now you can take it in a number of ways. You could take it at face value. Here's a child at night meeting a knight, and he's trying to trick him with various questions. So he's obviously up to no good, but what does he represent? He may represent a royalist. He is a royalist knight, a cavalier, and the child is a young Puritan showing his true Christian credentials. Or on an even more extreme basis, the false knight could actually be the devil, and the child's journey is to heaven, and the knight's trying to trick him into hell. So you could take it on a number of possible footings. At the very start of the English Civil War, when King Charles's forces tried to force their way into London, it was largely the apprentice boys of London who came out to resist them. And a lot of them were captured by the king. Now these apprentice boys were aged 14 to 21. Some of them might even be younger if they're given an earlier age. And they were given a choice of either abandoning the parliamentary cause or death. And a lot of these young boys said, well, we'll take death. And the king was so taken aback by this, he just ordered them to be branded and sent off. But I think what that suggests is that generally young people aren't interested in politics or political causes. But when they are interested, then they are totally dedicated to it. You know, when you get the young fired up, that's a powerful force. So this song puts me in mind of that real historical incident.
What brings you here so late, said the knight on the road. I go to meet my God, said the child as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. I go to meet my God, said the child as he stood. How will you go by land, said the knight on the road. With a strong staff in my hand, said the child as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. With a strong staff in my hand, said the child as he stood. How will you go by sea, said the knight on the road. With a good boat under me, said the child as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. With a good boat under me, said the child as he stood. Methinks I hear a bell, said the knight on the road. It's ringing you to hell, said the child as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. It's ringing you to hell, said the child as he stood. What brings you here so late, said the knight on the road. I go to meet my God, said the child as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. I go to meet my God, said the child as he stood.
Now, I don't think this is a spoiler for the exhibition, but the King did lose the Civil War. That can't come as a shock to any of you. He did lose the Civil War, and primarily, I would say, because the Puritan soldiers were so dedicated to their cause. It was a religious army, highly disciplined, and after 1645 with the new model army, with officers who were put in place because of their merit. Whereas before, and indeed after, officers were there because of their social standing. And it was really Cromwell who forced through that. He wanted the best people, irrespective of whether or not they were a gentleman. So this is the main reason they won the war, that they were better disciplined, they were better organised, and they were better motivated. But having won the war, they then had to win the peace, and that was a lot harder, because they were divided into numerous factions. And by the time you get to the late 1640s, you can look all these up on Google and enjoy yourself, thinking we've got mad political times now, you know. Look up the Ranters, look up the Levellers, the Diggers, the Muggletonians, the Fifth Monarchists, are all passionate about what they believed in. And so they had to steer this middle course. But the result was that in Parliament there were arguments, and nothing was achieved. So eventually, in 1653, Cromwell's had enough. He marches in and closes Parliament down and rules as Lord Protector, which is a bit ironic, as the whole war had been fought for the rights of Parliament, and you end up basically with the military running the country. And Cromwell was not an extremist. He's often painted as a dour Puritan. He liked music, he liked dancing, he had a sense of humour, but he had to keep the Puritans on side. And one thing the Puritan Parliament did pass was an act banning maypoles and Christmas. Now, if you're an ordinary peasant, not particularly interested in religion, not particularly interested in politics, but very interested in having a good time, and your life was very predictable, your hours were long, your work was hard, your wages were low, but you enjoyed May Day, and you particularly enjoyed Christmas, the 12 days of Christmas. And the 12 days of Christmas in England were notorious for their drunken debauchery. And a visitor to York from, I think it was Spain.
There's going to be a resurgence.
We're bringing it back this year. Yeah, this year we're going to do the 12 days of Christmas. This visitor, I think of Spain, came to York on the 12th day of Christmas and thought that the whole city had been hit by the plague because of all the bodies lying around the street. So the banning of Christmas was not popular. In fact, there was a whole song, one of the most popular songs of the period, that was attacking this banning of Christmas. And one thing that did happen at Christmas, in most gentry families were expected at Christmas to invite all the peasants into the big hall and give them food and give them drink. It was a little moment of equality where the high and the low came together. And of course the Puritan gentry weren't doing any of that. No, you go to church and you hear a 3-hour sermon, and then you go home and you read your Bible and you pray. You may wonder how successful that was. But I'm just going to sing you a song. It's a short song, but it really sums up the Puritan attitude to Christmas. Christmas is now drawing near at hand. Be with the Lord and be at his command. Your conversation God doth much dislike, and yet he shakes his sword afore he strikes. Down in the garden where flowers grow in ranks, down on your bended knees and give the Lord thanks. Down on your knees and pray both night and day. Leave off your sins and live a righteous way. So high and lofty do some people go, dressing themselves like players in a show. They patch and paint with idle stuff, as if God had not made them fine enough. Even little children learn to curse and swear, and can't rehearse one word of godly prayer. Oh, teach them better, oh, teach them to rely on Christ the sinner's friend who reigns on high. Merry Christmas. So we need a bit of an antidote to that now. So that this song that Steve's going to lead on. Martin. Well, so both these next songs were, if you imagine, you've been through a civil war. You can imagine, take Arundel. You know, you've been attacked, counter-attacked. Even when the troops leave, the town is pretty ruined. Shops have been looted, houses have been wrecked. The castle is in ruins, things aren't great, and then you've got the Commonwealth banning the things that you enjoy. So one way you can fight back is by little nonsense, comical songs, songs that you know Puritans really, really wouldn't like. And this is an example. This is Martin Said, which is in your booklet.
Martin said to his man, who's the fool now? Martin said to his man, who's the fool now? Martin said to his man, fill thou the cup and I the can.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
I saw a man in the moon.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a man in the moon.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a man in the moon shining up an angel's shoe.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
I saw a mouse chase a cat.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a mouse chase a cat.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a mouse chase a cat. Then the cheese ate the rat.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
I saw a flea heave a tree.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a flea heave a tree.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a flea heave a tree 40 miles out to sea.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
I saw a hare chase a hound.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a hare chase a hound.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a hare chase a hound 40 miles above the ground.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
I saw a maid milk a bull.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a maid milk a bull.
Who's the fool now?
I saw a maid milk a bull, every pull a bucket full.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
Don't tell her I'm drunk again.
Who's the fool now?
Don't tell her I'm drunk again.
Who's the fool now?
Don't tell her I'm drunk again. She'll be pecking me like a mother hen.
Thou is well drunken man, who's the fool now?
So the next song, Steve is going to. This would undoubtedly have been one of the most popular songs of the 17th century, and this is a song we have sung before, and we always introduce it by highlighting its deep philosophical content and its theological aspirations. And you're, having heard it, you'll be a better person, I assure you.
Fisherman, fisherman, standing by the sea, do you have a crabfish that you could sell to me?
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
Yes sir, that indeed I do. I have a crabfish that I could sell to you.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
I took him home, I thought he'd like a swim. I filled up the chamber pot and threw the bugger in.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
And later that night, I thought I'd have a fit, when my old lady got up to take a shit.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
Husband, husband, run quick to me. The devil's in the chamber pot and he's got hold of me.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
Children, children, fetch the looking glass. Come and see the crabfish that bit your mother's arse.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
Children, children, did you hear the grunt? Come and see the crabfish that bit your mother's nose.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
That's the end of me song, there isn't any more. I've an apple in me pocket and you can have the core.
By the wayside, hi diddly hi do.
Warren, that song has never been sung in this church before.
Don't say that.
So you get the idea in song. You get the battle songs, you get the political religious songs, you get the reaction, the comical songs, and then we get towards the late 1650s when people have been living with this tumultuous life for getting on for 2 decades. And whether people have been royalists, or whether people have been for Parliament, or whether they were for Cromwell, or whether they wanted the king back, or whether they were just neutrals, whatever, people were just thinking, this has got to end. We need some resolution. And this song by the late 1650s, was being sung all over England. And it's called When the King Comes Home in Peace Again.
Let rogues and cheats prognosticate concerning kings or kingdoms' fate. I think myself to be as wise as he that gazeth on the skies. My sight goes beyond the depth of a pond, or rivers in the greatest rain, whereby I can tell that all will be well when the King comes home in peace again. By this I can tell that all things will be well when the King comes home in peace again. There's neither swallow, dove, or dade can soar more high or deeper wade, nor show a reason from the stars what causes peace or civil wars. The man in the moon may wear out his shoon by running after Charles his wain, but all's to no end, for the times will not mend till the King comes home in peace again. By this I can tell that all things will be well when the King comes home in peace again. Though for a time you may see Whitehall with cobwebs hanging on the wall, instead of gold and silver brave, which formerly was wont to have, with rich perfume in every room, delightful to that princely train. Yet the old again shall be when the times you will see that the King comes home in peace again. By this I can tell that all things will be well when the King comes home in peace again. Then far upon Ararat Hill my hope shall cast her anchor still, until I see some peaceful dove bring home the rush I dearly love. Then will I await till the waters abate, which now disturb my troubled brain. For I never rejoice until I hear the voice that the King comes home in peace again. No, I'll never rejoice until I hear the voice that the King comes home in peace again.
I probably ought to point out some of the words in this song because it's a bit lost in the mist of time. So in the second verse, the reference to there's neither swallow, dove, or dade can soar more high or deeper wade, nor show a reason from the stars which causes peace or civil wars. Swallow, dove, and dade were all the surnames of astrologers. And so during this period, there's a massive increase in divination and people trying to discern the future by various means. So it's ironic, it's paradoxical. You've got this Puritan era, and yet you've got all these people going off doing sort of occultist things. So the song is basically saying, you know, don't listen to the astrologers. Nothing's going to get better until we have some order and stability back in England. And then in the last verse, then far upon Ararat Hill, those of you who know your Bible and Noah will know that Ararat Hill was where Noah's Ark rested. And so the whole song is basically, you know, what's happened in England is basically equivalent to the Great Flood. You know, everything's gone, everything's been washed away, but there's Noah's Ark, and then the King will come back and all will be well. And so the King did come back, but whether all was well, of course, is another question entirely. And this is the story of human history, isn't it? People have high hopes, high expectations. There's a change of government. Everyone thinks it's going to be great, and then it isn't. And then people get disillusioned, and then they think, oh, we'll have the other people in, they'll be great. And then they get in, oh no. But this is that experience in an extreme form. It's an extreme form. So you had Charles I ruling as a divine monarch. He's overthrown, he's executed. The monarchy is abolished. The House of Lords are abolished. Christmas, May Day abolished. Then the king comes back, Charles II, and there's wild celebrations. But I think a lot of the celebration wasn't so much that everyone was royalist. It was more like, it's over. It's over. We've got back to some sort of normality. But of course it didn't last. It didn't last. And 25 years later, England almost falls into civil war again. You've got the exclusion crisis, you've got Monmouth's rebellion, you've got James II, and ultimately he's thrown out of power when the two ruling factions in England decide they're making so much money through their mercantile interests, they can't afford another civil war, so best agree the king's abdicated. And now this next song, Old England Grown New, I see this as being an old soldier at that time, probably in the 1680s, and as we tend to do as we get older, everything looks better in the past. Everything. Even when things are demonstrably and objectively better in the present than the past. Yes, but it was good poverty, wasn't it? We enjoyed ourselves, And this song is a song of disillusionment with everything that's happened in the country. I'll just sort of go through a few of, if you found it, Old England Grown New, just as we go through, because you'll think, well, what does all this sort of thing mean? Some of it's self-evident. It's a soldier, and he's going, basically the soldiers of now aren't like the soldiers of when I was a lad. Their weapons are rubbish now. Instead of a broadsword, they've got a stiletto sword. And they're more interested in polishing their swords than actually doing any fighting. And then the second verse, new captains are made that never did fight, with pots in the day and punks in the night. I think punks? What were they doing in the 17th century? Well, a punk was basically like a rent boy. He was a young man, usually a poor young man, who was used for the sexual delights and pleasures of desolate upper-class men. So it's having a go at that. And then the third verse is just basically saying, the king used to go around with a lovely parade of horses and footmen, and now there's just 6 horses and a coach with a guide. That's not like Queen Elizabeth's day, is it? It's rubbish monarchy now. And then the change in fashions. At the beginning of the 17th century, the fashions were still quite medieval. By the end of the 17th century, it's particularly men's clothing, trousers, jackets, it's all become much more similar to clothing we know now, and an attack on French fashions and other gewgaws. Gewgaws is basically tat, nonsense, rubbish. And then we get on more about fashions and more new diseases beside the French pox, which is syphilis and was known as the French disease. So there's a lot of anti-French feeling in the country at this time. And even the houses that are built. You have the lovely old timber-framed houses with the thatch, and now they're building with brick and stone, and they're great big terraced houses, and they're badly built, and they all fall down. And it's all terrible architecture, and it's not like it used to be in the good old days. And then we get towards the end, and it's basically saying, there's new people in power, new trickings, new goings, new measures, new paces, new fashion, new riches, new power in new places, and old sneers and old scores on a set of new faces. So it really is the ultimate cynical song. It doesn't matter who's running the country. They're all pretty awful. And I suppose the ending is a bit hopeful. It's almost saying, well, Old England is New England, and New England's Old England, and there will always be an England, and we'll all be always still moaning about it.
That is optimistic.
Very optimistic, yeah. So make sure I put these in the right order. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? That's it, okay. Right. Hang on a minute, Mr. Mott. Let's take a drink from my glass.
You talk of Old England, I truly believe. Old England's grown new and doth us deceive. I'll ask you a question or two by your leave.
And is not Old England grown new?
Where are your old soldiers with slashes and scars? They never used drinking in no time of wars, nor shedding of blood in mad drunken jars.
And is not Old England grown new?
New captains are made that never did fight, with pots in the day and punks in the night, and all their chief care is to keep their swords bright.
And is not Old England grown new?
Where are your old swords, your bills and your bows, your bucklers and targets that never feared blows? They are turned to stilettos and other fair shows. And is
not Old England grown new?
Where are your old courtiers that used to ride, with 40 blue coats and footmen beside? They are turned to 6 horses, a coach with a guide.
And is not Old England grown new?
And what has become of your old English clothes, your long-sleeved doublet and your trunk hose? They are turned to French fashions and other gewgaws.
And is not Old England grown new?
We have new-fashioned beards and new-fashioned locks, and new-fashioned hats for your new-painted blocks, and more new diseases beside the French pox. And
is not Old England grown new?
New houses are built and the old ones pulled down, until the new houses fall on the old ground, and the houses all stand like a horse in the pound.
And is not Old England grown new?
New fashions in house, new fashions at table, old servants discharged and the new not so able, and all good old custom is now but a fable.
And is not Old England grown new?
New trickings, new goings, new measures, new paces, new fashions, new riches, new power in new places, old sneers and old scores on a set of new faces.
And is not Old England grown new?
Then talk no more of New England. New England is where Old England did stand.
New furnished, new fashioned, new woman, new man. And is not Old England grown new?
Chris, boys, wonderful, thank you. It struck me sitting here that this must be the first time these songs have been sung in this place since they were perhaps sung 3.5 centuries ago. You imagine the horses in the stables there, defiling the church. It's quite remarkable. We've come back here, and Chris, you've taken us back. Thank you very, very much.